Today's video is about how you can do anything you want in life if you are a determined person and you are willing to learn and set your mind to what you're doing. I'm going to tell you about my journey getting into filmmaking and how I started and how I built what I built with that business because it was pretty incredible. I grew up in St. Louis, Missouri, and I lived there. I didn't really travel outside the US at all. We went to Mexico, I think, once on a cruise when I was younger, but we weren't, going outside of the States. So I had this really big calling to leave as soon as I graduated. I lived in Louisiana for 4.5 years. Then I moved to California and I finished school out there. And I was living out there and I had finished school. I was feeling like I didn't really want the 9 to 5. I applied for, when I finished school, more than I don't know, 15 to 18 jobs. And I got offered almost every single one of them, and none of them were calling my name. So at that time, I was still bartending, and I started working at Ralph Lauren. And I just really had such an inkling to do something bigger and something more than just have a typical path of, working for someone else and then climbing the corporate ladder. So I've never done that. What I ended up doing is a friend of mine from high school, she actually was living on Nantucket Island and her husband and her were leaving, and she said, there's this beautiful island. I said I was kind of bored. I didn't know what I wanted to do. And she said, I'm leaving. And I had this bartending job. And it's at this tiny little restaurant called American Seasons. And I feel like you would like it. The money is great. And the people are awesome out here. And I think you would really like it. So I just said, yes, I'm coming. And I didn't think any more about it in that moment. But I realized this would change the trajectory for my entire life. Being a person who lived on that island for 9.5 years, it taught me so much about myself, about entrepreneurship, about community, and it really just changed who I became. So I moved out there. I started bartending. I actually went to school for marketing, PR, communications. That's what I ended up majoring in. And I just felt like I wanted to write at that time. So I started writing for a local newsletter, which led me to writing for a local magazine that was on the island, a couple different publications. I even had a series at one point that was talking about various relationships and why they were so fun. And I just got to pitch my own ideas, which was really amazing. And I felt like I was tapping into creativity. So that was before I started doing the filmmaking. Well, one of the things you do on the island is you're always involved in the different things going on because it's a small place. I think I don't know how many people live there now year round, but it was something like 10 to 15,000 people. And then it swells in the summer to, of course, 40 to 60,000 people visitor wise. And it was just, there was a film festival on the island and I volunteered because I thought how fun to be able to drive around producers and directors and things like that to their premieres. So I volunteered to drive people around. Got to meet some really cool people. I drove Diane Keaton to her film premiere, the director for Toy Story 2, I think it was 2 or 3. But I also, a lot of people wanted to drive those kinds of people, the more famous, ones that you see in People magazine and things like that. And I was more interested in, because I really always liked documentaries and watching those. So I thought, well, it would be fun to, no one had signed up to do some of the documentary driving. So I got to drive this one guy, and I'm forgetting the name of him and also the film, but the film, and I would get to sit and watch the films with everyone. So we would sit. The end of the film, he got a standing ovation. The film was so moving. It was about horses and animals, and it was incredible to see how people connected to that film. And in that moment, that's when I knew I wanted to tell stories through video because I wanted to make people feel like that. And so what I did from there is I ended up finding a mentor on Nantucket. This was after I had gone off for the winter. So I went and lived in New Zealand, and I, after moving there, was like figuring out what I wanted to do after that before I came home, because the winters on Nantucket are pretty desolate. Nothing's going on there. A lot of things are closed down. So a lot of people travel or just live in a different seasonal community or whatever. So New Zealand was the first place that I moved. And then at the end of that trip, I did a little traveling around New Zealand, a teeny bit in Australia. And then when I went after that, I went to Bali for like a month or two. Um, I ended up finding this story, and I can't even remember how I found it. I was like researching something online. But anyway, I meet these two guys, and they are just like the coolest, quirkiest people. They have started a sustainable bean to bar chocolate factory, and we're helping like over 9,000 farmers in Indonesia get organic certified. And I just thought, this is the coolest story ever. And so when I was there, I got to taste the chocolate and like meet them. I told them, I said, I'm going to come back and I'm going to tell your story. I don't know yet how to make videos or how to make films, but I am going to come back in 1 year, because they were having on 11/11/11, which is an auspicious date. They were having the grand opening of the bamboo factory. And so we got to see like it being made and things like that when we were there. Um, the cool thing about this is I came back home, and before I came back home, I was looking around like, who am I going to learn this from? We're on an island. Like, I don't know anyone. So I started asking around, and three different people told me, you need to go and you need to meet Dan Driscoll. He is the person you need to learn from. So I said, well, if three people have told me this, I must email him or text him. So I can't remember how I reached out exactly, but he wrote me back and said, let me know when you're back on the island. Yeah, I'd love to have you like assist or whatever. I asked like intern or something. And so Dan's background, he was actually doing commercial work for Mattel, and he did commercials that you would see on TV, and he would shoot them in Vancouver for like Barbie and Toy Story. And so one of the things I got to do that I first started out with in the garage is we would pre-shoot these commercials. And so I would be the person in the back, like with my hands, pretending I'm a child, like moving the toys around like they do. So they work out all the kinks basically before they go to shoot. So I learned that. That was one of the like projects we did. The other thing, the very first thing that I got to shoot on camera, that I was behind the camera operating it, and I was scared. I was so scared that I was going to mess something up. But we had the opportunity to film a book trailer for Nathaniel Philbrick, who's absolutely amazing, an author, and his movie, I'm sure you've heard of it, got turned into The Heart of the Sea. Is, you know, like the big production in Hollywood, and I'm sure you've seen it or you've at least heard of it. But that his book was turned into the movie, and so we were filming the book trailer like for him to promote the book at the time. And I just remember being terrified that I was gonna not press record or be out of focus. But that was one of my like first moments being behind the camera for something more important. I remember, just like a complete side story, is he was one of the nicest people, and he was like, oh, you know, where do you work? You work at this bar, because I was bartending. And he told me he was going to come in and have cocktails. He had a meeting with someone later that day. And so they came in, and I, you know, got to meet the person. I didn't know who he was at the time. Hi, my name's Ron. It's nice to meet you. Shook his hand, made them cocktails, made conversation, whatever, moved on with my day, my life. Well, come to find out later, that was Ron Howard, who was producing the, you know, the whole, he was the filmmaker that was making his book into the movie. So really fun connections that I always got to have on Nantucket. Never knew you were going to meet there, and everybody was just so lovely. So anyway, that is the very beginnings of me learning my skill. I just learned so much over 6 months, and I didn't, you know, at that time I had like a little handy cam that like flipped open. I was ultimately setting myself up to go back and film this documentary that I had no idea, you know, like what to do. So I was learning over 6 months. I also started filming weddings, which was very interesting to learn, because you have to think on the fly, on your feet. You really have to be, you can't ask someone to repeat the moment at the wedding. You can't say, okay, cut, take two. No, that doesn't happen. You just have to quickly get creative. You're constantly looking for creative angles. And I think that that really made me thrive in everything else that I started to do and travel later on. So all of this to say, I went back, I made the documentary, and then I came back to Nantucket and I decided, because they had bean to bar chocolate, that we were going to use some of the chocolate. We were going to make chocolate martinis for the film premiere, and the film premiere was going to be on the beach. This was a 20-minute short film. And I was terrified that nobody was going to show up. We charged because it was at this beautiful place called the Galley Beach, and it's just stunning. It's on the water. It's like one of the the more high-end restaurants on the island. But they agreed to have it there, and we charged people to get in. I was like, what if no one shows up? What if no one pays to be there? I put it online. Everybody showed up. It sold out, and there was a wait list. It was like over 100 people. I was shocked. And this is where community comes in, because this community, they are just, I knew a lot of people at this point because I had worked in bartending, and a lot of people come to the restaurant and you get to know everyone. And it was just like mind blowing to me that that many people had showed up to see something that I created. And that was not my best work. It was the first thing I ever did. I thought it was a really interesting story. And that's where it all started, was just that. So after that premiere, um, the lady that started the book festival, she owns a bookstore on Nantucket and also the brewery, Wendy Hudson. She had asked me, could I do a trailer for the book festival? And I was like, yeah, of course. So at this point, I still have my little handy cam. I don't own a camera yet. I'm like, yeah, I can do that. So I made a 30-second video, and I'm sure I still have it somewhere, but it was, it's still pretty, but very, very not what I do now. But it was a stepping stone somewhere. So I did that. And then the woman that was at the farm, Bartlett's farm, she asked me, hey, could you do a whole series of videos for us? So I was like, yes, I can. I had no idea how to charge for that. I asked Dan, he gave me some pricing. I bought his camera because I was like, I need a professional camera now. I can't just be using this other one. And I made those videos, and they were awesome, and I still like them. They're still being used on their website today, I believe. And that's where it really started. And then it started word of mouth, word of mouth, word of mouth. So I was still bartending, and I slowly got my way out of bartending into doing the stuff for the small businesses. And then getting into travel, I was like, okay, well, if I got into the video this way, how can I get into the travel? So I ended up connecting with someone. They offered me to come on. I did a lot of work for free in the beginning to come on. They were setting up these amazing glamping trips, and they were doing one across southern Utah where the tent would move every night. And so I got to be a part of that, and I filmed that, and that was really special. So it was my first video assignment for something travel related, but it was still for a business. And then I think I got invited on a press trip because I had been travel blogging from the time that I was in New Zealand. And then I went on that, and then I met some people there, and then I got invited to some other things. So the point of this is that if you show up and you are consistent and you are doing good work, someone will see it. Someone will recommend you to someone else, or maybe someone will allow you to take a chance on you. But you have to put in the work. I think that so often we see people that have been putting in the work, but we don't see their whole story. We don't see all the things that happen behind the scenes. We see the glamorous point that they've made it to, and all the Instagram followers that they have now, and the big audience and the bigger work that they've done. But you don't know that they came from and that they did in the very beginning. And so if you are a business owner and you're watching this and you're in the messy middle, if you are struggling to continue, just know that if you do and you are able and willing to make tweaks along the way, to course correct if something isn't working, you can make it. You can do really anything that you want to. So, yeah, so anyway, that's how I got into all the filmmaking, and I just love telling stories. I think my favorite thing about telling stories is that I am able to connect people with an audience. So whether that is a destination that I'm telling the stories of the people that live there, and they have these beautiful stories to share about the special things in their community, and then I get to connect that with an audience that will then see all of those beautiful things they can do, and then they can come and experience them. Um, that makes me feel so good. Or whether it's me creating a video that is a product, or like a book launch, or something that someone could use, like a ceramics company. This is not the ceramics company. I actually came back here and my favorite mug is missing, and I don't know where it is. But Ana Librija, like, I told her story. She's the beautiful ceramicist in Mexico City, and I don't have her cup down here anymore. There's a teapot in the corner over there still by her, but I don't know what happened to that cup, and I'm kind of sad. But I have all of her dishware at home. She has a beautiful story. And I was able to tell that story, and she can then use that to promote her products and resonate with people in the way, because you know the deeper connection to the items that are being sold to you and that you're purchasing. And it's not just a purchase, it is it's like magic, like when you have something, and I talked about this in another video that I created. These things that I make videos about, whether it's the people or the product, it feels like magic, the stories that I get to tell. There was this one guy in Vermont who had a knife making company, and I just found him on Instagram, and I was in Vermont just randomly for vacation, just rented a car and was taking some time off. And I messaged him and I was like, I'm in the area. Would you mind if I like popped by and made a video of you? And so I did, because I just think those stories are so interesting of why people get into the things that they do. One of the things I would like to do is do more storytelling again. I've been so busy with travel planning, and I love that so very much. I really love planning trips for people and connecting them to the destinations and the people that live there. But I miss doing storytelling all the time. We have a big storytelling project coming up in March, and it's going to be in various parts of California, so I'm very excited about that. But if you're watching this and you need your story told, I'm all for it. I'd love to help you out. But yeah, I feel like, the point of this video today is I wanted to share, yes, my story, but to share that anything is actually possible when you want it enough in life, if you are willing to put in the work and get creative and really just kind of do the thing over and over and over again and become really good at it along the way. I hope that this inspires you to keep going after your dreams and your dream life.